Right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Call Me Crazy. I'm so excited. We have on Gaby and Mike Grinberg. They are co-founders, just like Michael and I, in business together and in a relationship. They are the founders of Proofpoint, which is a digital marketing agency. So we're going to dive in with them on their business, their path, and what they're up to now. So Mike and Gaby, welcome.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
I know
Glad to chat with you guys.
I know. Excited to have two couples on the show. This is the first time ever where we have four people. Do you guys want to give a little background on your company and when you guys got started together, and then we can kind of go into all that?
Yeah. So I'll try to do the very high level Cliff Notes version because it is a very long story. But the simplest and easiest and just most direct thing that I tell everybody is we started our business out of a family crisis. Our daughter, who's 5 years old now and doing fantastic, she was born in 2015. She was born severely premature. She was born 4 months early at 24 weeks gestation. And she had a very long NICU journey, 6 months in the NICU. And, you know, the life after the NICU was very challenging for us as parents. And there was a series of unfortunate events that happened that kind of pushed us to become what I say accidental entrepreneurs. Although Mike will refute that point because he's always wanted to be an entrepreneur. He has like a million.
We both have. I mean, you've got a couple of domains and businesses under your name too. So
yeah. I mean, we kick the can around. We kick the ideas around of what it could be like to work as an entrepreneur, not necessarily together, but as owning our own businesses.
For that matter, definitely not together.
Not together.
That was not in the plans. I was very much against it.
Yes, that is true. Mike was adamant that we not work together, but as I said, there was kind of these series of events. So the first one obviously was our daughter being born so premature. We had absolutely no inclination that this would happen. It was very sudden and very quick, and we were just sort of like deer in headlights. And then very shortly after that, it was a week after my C-section, I had an emergency C-section, that I lost my job. So talk about insult to injury. We went from being a dual income family overnight to a single income with a child in critical condition. I was recovering, and I was also the primary healthcare holder at the time. So we had to very quickly figure out what the heck are we going to do with healthcare, with health insurance. And then 2 years after that, so at this point, you know, our daughter was in the hospital for 6 months. We're doing the best we can to hold things together. 2 years after her birth, so just shy, she was 22 months, just shy of turning 2. The company that Mike was working for at the time was going bankrupt. And the writing was on the wall, and we kind of looked at each other. We had maybe a couple of weeks of runway before it was going to be in the news, and things were going to be, it was just a very ugly, bad situation. And we just said to ourselves, oh my God, what do we do? You know, from Lana, our daughter, being born premature, me losing my job, then becoming a stay-at-hospital mom, then a stay-at-home mom, then the only source of income that we have, Mike's company, is going under, and we cannot afford to be without any sort of income for any gap of time. That would have been very scary for us,
Sure.
for anybody, really. And we looked at each other, and kind of the silver lining in all of this is that during those 6 months, during that crazy period of our life with our daughter in the hospital and us figuring out how to be parents to a child with medical needs, Mike had started taking on some clientele on the side, some freelance work. And he had grown the freelance work pretty significantly over that 2-year period. And it got to the point where he could no longer handle it on his own. And we both have
as a side business.
As a side business, correct. Yeah. He still had a full-time job. Then the freelance work was on the side, not to mention just being a dad and trying to figure that life out. And we both have a background in digital marketing. So he kind of looked to me and he said, well, why don't we do this together? Why don't we take this small bit of clientele that we have and service them together? And it was very serendipitous because I was very much looking forward to getting back to my career. I had taken 2 years off to care for our daughter, and I was at the point where I was ready to go back to work. And so the stars kind of aligned for us, not in the way that we would have ever envisioned, or not in the way that we would ever want for anybody else to have to go through that. But, out of this very chaotic and hectic and crazy time is where we found our path. And so that is kind of how Proofpoint was born, so to speak.
And how long ago was that? Just a couple years ago?
That we started the company
June of 2017. We joke that our company's got 3 birthdays, just like our daughter does, that we celebrate, because there's when I started consulting, when I incorporated, and then when we started working together kind of full time and actually just did that, nothing else. And then with our daughter, we celebrate when she was actually born, when she was supposed to be born, and when she was released from the hospital. So it's sort of the serendipitous, I guess.
And I'm sure everybody wants to know, I mean, we work together, you guys are working together. You even have a podcast about it, with Mixing Business with Pleasure podcast. How is it working together? What are the kind of the boundaries you've set up, and how do you operate it all? Because I know for us, it's been a learning experience to get to a point where, you got to somehow figure out the separation between that work-life balance. And it's hard, we're working from home. I don't know if you guys are working from home right now.
We're fully remote.
Yeah.
So it's not easy working from home. I mean, there's only so many rooms you can go hide in. So how do you guys go about it right now?
Well, first and foremost, we joke that we have to have separate offices. That if we did not, if we
we
had
don't
to
joke, that's 100%.
If we worked in the same room, there's a high chance that we probably would not even be married today. So
sure, yeah, I agree.
Definitely separate offices. That's for us, that's been critical in being able to perform and work to the best of our abilities. Mike has certain annoying things that he does, and I have certain things that I do, and together they clash. But as long as we have separate rooms, that is, like I said, the number one piece of advice that I give to couples that are thinking about starting a business, assess your living space. Can you physically, and COVID times, everyone's under the same roof. But can you physically work in the same space as your partner? And if you guys can work together in all aspects, but you need separate spaces, then, hopefully that's an easy fix. Maybe one can take the bedroom, or you have a spare bedroom. Maybe you have an office space. Someone works, in another part of the house. Under non-COVID times, I worked out of a co-working space a few times a week. So that allowed me to get out of the house and just physically just be in a different place, which was very important for me, mentally important for me in terms of what I need to do to be effective in my business.
And it's so much different from, working with a coworker. For some reason, you can put up with them. You don't act the same around them. The boundaries are so much different. And I think people listening that, don't work with your significant other, it is a whole different realm, because it's like, I don't know, it's growing up with like siblings. Like, you're so much different. You yell at your siblings, you do all this stuff because you can, because they're going to love you. But it's hard to get those boundaries. And I think it's definitely a learning experience. Every day we're learning something new. Like, we decided eventually that we need like maybe Slack instead of like walking into each other's rooms to communicate, because it's hard to like,
I'm still guilty of that one.
Yeah, because then it kind of snowballs into something else. You go there and ask a question, and then like 20 minutes later, it's like you got in a heated argument because you're actually now deciding something later. All this stuff. But
the modes of communication are so open. Like, you could have a conversation at dinner or after dinner about work, but do you want to? And what are the boundaries? Sometimes it's nice, and sometimes we have our ideas like on a walk or on a weekend. And I think that's one really great silver lining of working with your significant other, because you can always have your business mindset on, but it's turning it off and knowing when the other person is kind of not in that business mood.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have set any boundaries for like post-work day, because obviously the work day is one thing, how to communicate, how to stay away in different offices and stay in touch. But then it's like, what about Saturday mornings when you're like with the kids and like, maybe you had an idea? Do you guys like talk about that?
I would say we haven't set formal boundaries, in the sense that we haven't really said, okay, 6 p.m. and there's no more business talk, or we don't talk business on weekends. Really, the way that it's, to a certain extent, I think we've played it a little bit more organically, where it almost never, there's been a few times, but generally it's only one of us that's just done. And then we just open about it, be like, okay, you know what? I'm done. No more business talk. And the other one just goes, okay. Fine.
Well, one of the
No
things
problem.
that I'm so glad you guys asked this question of us, because it's something that Mike and I really had to explore in our relationship and in our business. And it's quite frankly, the reason why we started our podcast, Mixing Business with Pleasure, is because we wanted to hear and learn, very selfishly, we wanted to learn from other couples. And thankfully, the podcast is out there, and we don't have to selfishly hoard these conversations. It's available to everybody, and which is, I think, why people start podcasts, because there's a curiosity there. But for us, like Mike said, initially, Mike is the type of guy that's like always on. His work brain is like always on, turned on 24/7. And I thought, in the beginning of us working together, that I had to constantly like indulge him in his work talks and his work musings, and that I had to constantly be on, and that I had to constantly like just have my work brain on with him, alongside him, because I'm the co-founder, and I have to be, and honestly, it caused a lot of tension in the marriage. I felt that, and this is something that we openly discussed, I felt like, you're not giving the marriage and the relationship enough time as you give the business. And for the longest time, I couldn't put a finger on it. I didn't know what was bothering me, but I knew I was furious, and I knew it was Mike's fault. And once we dissected the problem a little bit, I came to the understanding and the realization that Mike's brain works differently than I do, and that's not a big epiphany. Men and women, we're different, right? But I also realized that I have the permission, even though I'm a co-founder and co-owner of the business, I have permission to turn it off. And so if Mike comes to me and it's after work hours or on the weekend or like early in the morning before I'm getting my day started, and he's like, a freight train coming at me, I can say, Mike, I'm not ready to discuss this right now. Let's put a pin in it. And I literally say that.
That's
and,
good.
Yeah.
That's good that you know that about yourself too, that it's like, I can't do this right now.
Yeah. And I will say that there's the occasional time where it's the opposite, where I'm coming to Mike, I've got this brilliant idea, or I have something that's bugging me, and Mike's not in the mood, which is usually that happens less often in our relationship. But when it does happen, Mike has the permission to say, Gabby, I know you're really excited about telling me this. I'm not ready to listen to this. Can we come back to it? And I do, and we do. And we either set up a time during the week where we can talk about this, whatever that is,
Yeah.
or we move it to our executive team meeting. We have once a week, we have an executive team meeting. The executive team is just Mike and I. Maybe as our company grows, we might start bringing in more executive level folks, or partners in the business. We're not entirely sure how that's going to look like in the future, but at the moment, we have an executive team meeting. It's once a week where there's an agenda. We come prepared. He has his agenda items. I have my agenda items, and we stick to that 1 hour time. And that's when, during this time during the week, that's when we get to really talk about, some of the big items that we have going on, maybe some of the little minutia in the business, things that have come up. We also use part of our executive team meeting to talk about sales, to talk about our pipeline. At the moment, Mike and I are doing, are running both, sales as well as the other hats that we wear in the company. So we're very deliberate about using that executive team meeting during the week to prioritize our business needs, and also being very sensitive to what the energy is of the other person. If I'm not in a mindset to listen to Mike on something, I'm not going to be a good sounding board for him. I'm not going to be a good partner to him, both in the relationship and the business, because my brain is not in it, my heart is not in it, and I can't give him my full attention. And so we've learned the hard way, but we learned that it's okay to have space. It's okay that one person is not always on in the business.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's tough for us too, just to like know and guide through all that when you're working or not working. And it's, we've been doing this now for 3 years, and I think we've gotten to a place where we kind of understand it a little bit, and you understand like the quirks of everybody and like what they're doing. And it's kind of almost like building blocks. Like we're always changing and creating and doing different things, and it's never like a stagnant process. It's always growing into something more, because a year ago we're in a different place than we were then and until now. And it's interesting to see how it keeps kind of stacking up on each other. Like, oh yeah, like you can handle that, you can do that, and you kind of know each other better. You know yourself a lot better. I know we've read a lot of books to kind of understand management and working and doing a lot more remote stuff, and that's all a process too. You know, right now it's like you, it's this is the executive team right here. There's two of us, but we manage a lot of people, and that has been a learning experience. And for you guys, what was the point where you knew, you know, Proofpoint was going to be a actual business? Like, what were the steps? And you're like, oh, wow, we can actually scale this and make it into a business. Because I'm sure it didn't, you know, it was a process getting there. But one day you must have been like, this is it. Like, we can now make a living from this. And, you know, now you have a, you know, podcast studio. You guys are both in separate rooms recording. You know, you've advanced it all. So I'm sure now it's, you know, you're continuing to grow, but I'm curious about that beginning stages, because it's, you know, even for
like
us,
your first customer is so probably was so different how you handled that first customer to today, and you're managing customers plural and sales.
I mean, I would say so. A couple of things. One is from day one, Gabby and I looked at each other. We sort of said, okay, if we're going to do this, this is going to be like, we're going to build a real business. We're not just going to do like a consultancy where it's just you and I, and that's all we're doing. So that was like sort of from the get-go, that was the plan. And as far as like first customers, I mean, the reality is when we started the business, kind of both of us together full time, we already had, I think three clients at that point that I was already consulting for. So we had a head start, you could say.
And question about when you started, how did you figure out the pricing for these first few clients? Because I know that's always like a thing. You know, I used to do photography back then, like for years, and there's always a struggle. Like, how do I price this out so it's correct for my customer or whoever I'm going after? You know, because it's you know, it always fluctuates, but I'm sure it must have been difficult pricing these people out at first.
Yeah, I mean, in the service, like in the professional services space, it is, you know, there's always this whole dichotomy of, okay, are we doing time and materials? Are we doing, is it project based? Is it performance based, etc.? Now I pretty quickly, like, while it was the two of us, it was easier because it was okay. We're the only ones doing the work, and here's the, you know, the average hourly rate, etc. So we owe, like, the one thing we did right away, even while I was just consulting, is I personally hate the hourly model. I think it's the incentives are completely broken on that side, because if the client is sitting there asking, okay, well, how many hours did this take you? And well, it seems weird. Why did it take this long? Maybe it should be less. It's like, you're not concentrating on the right things. Like the relationship's busted from the beginning. So right away, we sort of focused on kind of recurring project, like flat fee model in terms of either flat fee monthly, flat fee project, whatever. So really kind of a value-based pricing, right?
I was gonna say, like, can you tell everybody kind of exactly what your first services were that you were doing, just so everybody can kind of understand?
We were doing a lot more. We were doing everything. That's
everything. Everything, like, and specifically B2B marketing, correct? Not consumer.
When we started, we were doing everything. We're doing B2B, B2C, because like both of our experiences are across the board. I mean, I personally like B2B significantly better than B2C. I don't like, I've done a lot of B2C, done e-commerce, done all that stuff. I just hate the holiday season. It drives me crazy. I mean, you guys are in the business. You know how it goes. Like, how, like, August through January, you're balls to the wall with no break, right?
Well, let me just add a little bit of color in here, Mike, because I think this is important. We shouldn't say we hate B2C because that's not true. We do have a few legacy B2C clients that we absolutely adore, and we keep them on because they're wonderful clients. When we started the business, when we started Proofpoint, we were very, very motivated about creating a family-first company and a people-first company because of the experiences that I went through personally. You know, having a job and then being let go via email, let me mind you, not even a phone call. I was still in the hospital recovering from an emergency C-section. I got an email from my boss at the time, CC his lawyer, saying that he was letting me go. Right. So, So when we started Proofpoint, we said, the reason we're doing this is because we want to have the family flexibility, the family first flexibility to be able to care for our daughter, who at the time had some medical needs. And we said, that what is missing today in the marketing world? What is missing today in companies? And this was, mind you, this was in 2017. So 2020 is a different beast.
Yeah, different world now.
Different world. But we really felt that having the flexibility to be, to take care of your family, to be able to put your family first, to be able to not have to, especially in the marketing world, you're coming from, there's a lot of stigma working with digital agencies, that it's churn and burn, that you're going to work odd hours and late hours, and you're going to, give your soul to the marketing devil. You know what I mean? And both Mike and I had been in companies of that nature, both agencies as well as startups. There's a lot of what I call, this underbelly of corporate America, this just dark, insidious, insipid side of having to work for somebody where you're literally, working yourself to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell this story. It's a bit TMI, but I think it's okay. I was working for a company one time, quick side note, and the culture was so awful. The culture was so toxic that if you were away from your desk for any period of time, you would get asked, "Where were you? We were looking for you." And I was so afraid to be away from my desk that I would hold it in to going to the bathroom as long as I could, until literally I was going to burst. I would hold it in as much as I could, so I would not be away from my desk.
Gee.
And I ended up getting really bad UTIs, infections, because I had this mental fear of the culture and my boss and everything. And now that's a bit extreme, okay? And that's probably a little TMI. But that just goes to show you that I know I'm not the only person that has experienced working for a company and a culture where it's very oppressive and toxic. And so when we started Proofpoint, we said, we want to be a family first culture. We want to allow our employees and our partners and whoever we work with to have the flexibility they need to be who they want to be in their personal lives. And so the deliberate reason why we stayed away from B2C, from e-commerce and such, is that you're really beholden to the holiday schedule. Starting in August with back to school, then Halloween, then Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then Black Friday, then who the hell knows what's happening between Christmas and Black Friday? There's always something happening.
Christmas and New Year's.
No wonder we're going crazy.
And then New Year, right? And so we just said, if we're really going to truly live the kind of culture and offer the kind of freedom that we want to have for ourselves and for our employees, we do not want to be beholden to the very manic and crazy and hectic schedule that inevitably happens because of the B2C world, the consumer and e-commerce world. And again, not that there's anything wrong with that, not that we are not buying shit on Black Friday, but we just knew that if we were going to have this company and we're going to focus on culture, which is paramount to our business, we did not want to have to be beholden to those types of schedules. So that's a quick. I digressed just a little bit, but I wanted to
take it back to the fact I don't hate. Gabby's right. I don't hate the B2C side of the business. We do have a couple of very awesome clients that we've kept around for that exact reason. They're just good people and they're fun to work with, etc. But we at this point, we're not taking on any new B2C work.
Sure,
it's just the reality. We're focusing on the B2B world. Going back to your question, because I do want to make sure I answer it. So we offered pretty much everything. I mean, so my background is fairly diverse. Gabby's is as well. I mean, I've done SEO, I've done paid media, I've done some analytics, I've done, literally just about everything under the sun. So, when you're starting out, you take what you can get, right?
Sure.
Especially
Anybody.
Especially you're not funded, anything. I mean, we've never taken any funding, anything like that. So took whatever we could get. I mean, did everything from SEO audits to content development to paid media management to, tag management and setup and analytics, all that stuff.
Social
Over time, we've actually
marketing.
really narrowed things in. So if you ask us what we do now, the answer is much different, right? But in terms of how we priced it, at the end of the day, we based everything on an hourly rate and then kind of looked at, okay, top down, bottom up in terms of, all right, if we want this kind of margin, what does that look like? And then bottom up in terms of if the client is paying this, what should their return be? And is that a realistic return? Right. And that's sort of how we came up with package pricing. I mean, everything was custom and it still to a certain extent is, but we have formulas now where it just makes it easier. But before it was every single client, every single project that came in, we'd sort of look back, okay, here's how much this cost us last time. Here's the kind of margin we want to make, et cetera, et cetera.
And question. So now that you're here 3 years later, right? That's 3 years from 2017.
That's actually when we started.
Yeah. And that's when we started Dope Dog as well. But how are you now scalable with two of you guys? How do you hire partners or outsource, or what's kind of the scenario there? Because I know a lot of people are, they're at home right now. They might be starting businesses. I know I have a lot of friends that, either lost their jobs, sold their jobs, got, like working at home now. Yep. And I think a lot of these, can be started online. And I know, social media managers right now, that's like a huge thing. People are making tons of money from managing social media. And I think that's something that, I'm not going to say it doesn't require a lot of skill, but it requires enough skill to organize and post and do all this stuff. And I think that's something like, if you're interested in marketing, I think knowing how to outsource and figure all that out is super interesting.
Well, like
go ahead, Gaby.
Well, like Mike said earlier, we were very, very deliberate when we said we're gonna do Proofpoint. We're gonna create Proofpoint. It wasn't gonna be just the two of us as consultants. We wanted to have a team, so we have our team.
That's actually why we call it Proofpoint and not like Grinberg Consulting or
like Mike and Gaby Marketing. We wanted to create a company that eventually would stand on its own 2 feet without us being in the day-to-day. Our long-term goal is that eventually we bring on a director of what's a position called, Mike? Why am I blanking?
We haven't just,
manager, marketing, and somebody.
General manager, manager of day-to-day, well, whatever it is, but essentially a person that would be the central person in the agency. Mike and I could step back from the day-to-day work. We'd still be involved in the company. We'd be involved in, big decisions, maybe still involved in biz dev and marketing related decisions for the company. But we knew that we always wanted to grow a company, have a team, build employees, bring on people, and eventually pull out so that we could live the lifestyle that we have envisioned for us. And who the heck knows, maybe start another company. So we do have a team, and we are 100% remote. So everyone that works for us works remotely. Now everyone's working from home, so that's a non-issue. And our team has fluctuated over the years. At one point we had 4 full-time employees, and unfortunately due to COVID, we did have to contract. And some people just chose to leave the company on their own for various decisions. But we are fully committed to building a team and having, hiring full time. We still work with a number of contractors. There are still quite a few things that are hard for us to hire full time right now because the work, we don't have that much work available, or it's flex. But to answer your question, we are, we are committed and we're bringing on full-time staff. In fact, we have a couple of open positions that we're going to be interviewing for in January.
Oh,
so
great.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
we got to post them, but we're getting ready to push them live.
Yeah, we're getting ready for that.
And with the contract work, what are some of the things that you found that, like, if you brought in-house might not be as scalable if you outsource it? Because we found that too, working with marketing agencies and stuff like that.
I mean, as of right now, the things that we've generally hired for, so we've got kind of strategy and account management in-house full-time, and paid media, because it's generally paid media is a retainer-based model, right? Almost never does somebody go, hey, can you come in and manage this for a month or 2 and then we're done kind of thing, right? It's at least a 6 to 12 month engagement, usually goes longer, etc. So that's easier to plan for. The stuff that we have generally use kind of long-term contractors for. I mean, these are people, some of them pretty much only do work for us and nobody else, is content and then creative. So we're not a creative shop, so we'll partner with others to do that. But those are the things where we generally, but right now we're going to be posting a position for a full-time content marketer. So.
And content's tough. I mean, it's, writing those blogs or doing content on the site or social or whatever it is. It's like the one thing that everybody needs, but it's also the thing that takes the most time. And we do that too. We outsource our content for our website, but a lot of the stuff, emails and stuff like that, that's done in-house.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important because I think people are finding the necessity and the kind of the advantage of having really strong SEO, because guess what? You don't have to compete with people during the holidays or anything like that. It's just like, if I search, calming dog treats, you might pop up first and you don't have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for that. And I think slowly a lot more businesses are understanding that, and consumers are understanding that, like, oh, wow. Because even now I feel like I know SEO really well. And sometimes I go to like the third page just to see, because like maybe these people just don't have really good SEO, but maybe I'll just go like search over there and see what's going on. But yeah, it's tough when you scale, because you never really know like at what point does in-house or outsourcing make sense, because some things can scale faster. Like, we don't know much about affiliate marketing, but we're giving it a shot in-house and trying it out, seeing if we can kind of get a ton of affiliates for our company. But eventually, if that doesn't work, we can go outsource, and we know that somebody might ignite that fire much faster than we can, researching and reaching out to things like that. Right.
Yeah.
On that note, I'd love to know about like kind of how you guys handle your human resources. Like, have you hired only contractors, or have you put people on payroll? And then with that, like, do you have any tools that you've, leaned on to kind of help manage those employees? Because that's kind of one thing that is a hesitation and something you really need to think through as a business owner before bringing on a team.
So we don't have, we're too small. We don't have a formal HR person or department. At some point we will, but we don't need it now. We were thinking about starting a relationship with like an HR consultant, somebody I'd worked with in the past at another agency, but we've kind of put that on hold for the time being. As far as tools, like we use Gusto for payroll. We outsource all of our accounting to a really great CPA firm. So they manage all our pay. Like, we don't touch any of that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
I will say,
go ahead.
I was going to say there's something very important. Two points that come to mind based on what you guys were saying earlier about hiring and kind of forecasting and knowing who to hire for and what to hire and when. One of the things that we were very deliberate about and that we've done when we kind of like started to recognize that Proofpoint was going to scale, it was about a year and a half ago. We worked with a business advisor, and he told us, he had us do an exercise of putting together different scenarios of what our hiring trajectory would look like over the course of 5 years, and and we still have these documents now. They have to be updated because 2020, but to actually map out.
That's got to be a T-shirt. If it hasn't been made yet, we need to hashtag because 2020.
Right. That's it. But we mapped out, who does what in the company, what are the different roles, and what are the org chart basically. And so in terms of hiring, in terms of having a plan to hire, I think it's very important for any company out there, instead of being reactive and like, oh shit, we got to hire, we just landed this big job, we just landed this big business or partnership or whatever, have a plan, have even if your plan is not accurate, even if it changes, even if, because 2020, you have to change your hiring plan, but at least have something on paper so that you can reference it and say, okay, this is what we projected. Here's where we need to shift. Here's where we need to change. So that's
Gabby, I'm surprised you didn't start talking about Culture Book.
I am going to talk about that.
Okay.
You can talk about it if you want.
Hey, that's your baby. You go for it.
That's my baby. Okay. Well, so the first thing
and
that
the
I
onboarding.
The onboarding, right. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was just having a plan for hiring, even if it's not accurate, even if you have to change it a bunch of times, at least more or less where you can project the types of talent and the types of skill set that you're going to need on your team. So that's number one. Number two, Aaron, you asked us about tools, and we can absolutely talk about tool stack. We have Slack. We have, like Mike said, we use Gusto. We have an outsourced CPA firm that handles all of our payroll and taxes and things like that. But one of the most important things that I felt was needed in our company, because we're 100% remote, is an employee culture book. We talked about culture being so central to our company, and when we were building the company, I'm like, oh, I need to put together an employee handbook. And the idea of the handbook is really just like a CYA thing. It's a CYA thing for companies out there to make sure that people don't do anything or say anything. And I'm not knocking the employee handbook. It's very important. But before we even did that, we put together an employee culture book. And the culture, and this, I can't take the credit on this. I came across this when I was doing some research. A lot of Silicon Valley startups and big companies like, HubSpot and GitLab and Google, all these big aspirational brands, they have this thing called a culture book. And it's really just a handbook about the culture. And it really gives your employees a tangible knowledge center on what's expected of them in the company. What is the company going to provide in terms of culture and cultivating the company culture, but what is the expectation on the employee side? Because culture is not top down, it's not bottom up, it's everyone coming together in the middle and agreeing that they're going to participate and they're going to be part of this culture. If I bring on an employee and they're really not on board with the culture, they're not participating on Slack, they're not following directions, they're bringing the whole team down, then I made the mistake and I hired the wrong person. Even if they are a rock star paid media manager or a rock star social media person, if they don't get on, if they don't feel like they can embrace what we're trying to create at Proofpoint, then they're absolutely the wrong employee for us.
And how long?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Do you want to
I was saying that's absolutely so important. And it kind of reminded me of the book we read by the founders of Basecamp, which is like a management program. And they're all
like
about
project
remote
management. Yeah, but they're all remote.
About remote work, and culture is extra important with that. And I've worked for a lot of larger companies, like you mentioned, Gabby, and they start with culture. Day one's culture, and you don't even get into the rules and tasks yet. And I think it's because when you have to feel a certain way to perform well, you have to be happy in your job first before anything else can happen. So I think that's
exactly what we do in our onboarding too. Our first, before we used to fly people in, so we would actually do onboarding in person.
That's so fun.
Obviously we're not doing that now, but we would.
Hopefully one day we can do that.
We'll get back to that. But we have figured out the process to be able to do pretty much the same thing without being in person. It's not the same, obviously, but we would take the person out to dinner, it's really about sort of getting to know them. And then it's
sure.
So we operate, we would do like personality assessments, do those types of things. So we would that would be really onboarding was the first 2.5 days was that. And then at the very end, that's when we start talking about, okay, well, here's the clients you're going to be on. And here's all that, because at the end of the day, that takes longer anyway. You can't do that in 2 to 3 days. And it's so much more important to get on the same page with everybody and meet people and get the lay of the land and how everybody works and things like that.
And how did you guys structure kind of the culture onboarding? Like, how would you go about creating that culture onboarding? Because I think that's really hard to even process in my mind, okay, how do we really get this across? And I think we're learning that now by, we've been hiring a few people, and I noticed that I'm very casual. I'm just hey, yeah, do it. I trust you. Go for it.
And I'm no, we need a brand book. We need a culture book. We need this.
I'm realizing
that's very much the same, because I'm kind of like that too. And Gabby is
I'm no, we need this. Michael, we learned this the hard way. I want to point this out, that we made a ton of mistakes. So if there's anyone out there listening, learn from these mistakes. When we hired our first employee, I still cringe. This still keeps me up at night. We brought her in, we took her out to lunch. We had an hour-long discussion. We handed her a laptop and we're like, voila, go forth, be prosperous. It was cringeworthy. And unfortunately, this employee did not last long because she was not set up to be effective. She was not, and that was 100% our fault. And I think that as entrepreneurs, you have to recognize when you make a mistake, because it's so easy to put the blame on others. Say, well, she was a bad hire, she didn't get it, it was her fault. No, the fault was 100% with us. And because of that, I'll tell you, I cried. I was upset. I told Mike, I'm like, I'm gonna throw away this business. I don't want to do Proofpoint anymore because I was so mad at how ineffectively and just how idiot. I told Mike, we're just idiots. We're like idiots. And the truth is you're not.
We didn't have the hiring process down.
We
either.
didn't have a hiring. We didn't have anything.
They just handed her a laptop. Like, here you go. I would have done the same. I would just taken the laptop and be like, all right, cool. Like, all right, guys, I'll work for you.
So anyone listening, I'm not gonna self-flagellate on the call anymore. Here's what we did that I think other people need to do and should do when you have a business, is especially when you make a mistake, learn from it. So number one, the first thing we realized is that the reason that our first hire did not work out is because we did not have a hiring process. So we spent weeks, months. In fact, we're still perfecting it. We're still tweaking things as we go.
Actually, something I want to throw out there is the funny thing is that, like I've been hiring marketing teams for whatever 7 years prior to that at other agencies, right? But it's crazy how much you miss when it's your own thing versus you're using somebody else's process. Because pretty much what I did, I'm like, oh well, I've done this before twice. Like I've built teams, great. I'm going to take the same process I used there. We're going to bring it in here. It's going to be perfect. Scorecard, etc. And it failed miserably because culture is different. The company is different. We don't have the infrastructure that those other businesses did because we're a startup, right? I mean, they'd all been in business for 7, 10, 15 years, right? So we're like Gabby said, we're still very much learning into sort of what works. But I think there's a tool stack we figured out for
hiring,
managing the recruitment process. There's the process itself.
We spent a number of weeks, maybe even a few months, on really perfecting that hiring process. And right now, we're actually
put it to the test.
We're actually going to put it. We're going to put it live on our website. It's not currently there. It's going to be there hopefully by the end of December, maybe early January. So that will be available to people that want to look at it and get inspiration. We will be outlining not just for for future employees, but heck, anyone that wants to learn from our mistakes, go to Proofpoint.marketing, hopefully in the next few weeks, and it should be there.
I'll definitely check that out.
So we spent a lot of time focusing on the hiring process itself, and we actually have a multi-step process. There's an initial phone screen, then there's another call in which
before the phone screen, what we do is there's an application process where we're having people record a couple of video clips and submit some things already because we're remote, right? So
I like that.
This remote communication is extremely important. I want to see how you do, right? And really it's a simple question. Like, this is not the exact question, but it's something like, even just tell me about yourself. Tell me why you want this job. Like, convince me, because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be convincing clients. You're going to be convincing your teammates, etc. Can you do it over video? And then a different type of question over writing, because again, written communication is extremely important. Right. Can you do those two things? And then the questions we're asking are culture based. So we're learning both. We're learning, are you, even before we talk to them, are we getting an idea of, do you fit the culture? And can you communicate well? Because if either of those things are off, there's not even a point of me spending my time talking to you.
Right. So there's those initial things. We go through in total, there's 6 touch points in our hiring process before an offer is extended. 6 touch points. The first time we did it, we had one meeting, we had one phone call, we had a half-hour lunch. Here's your computer, boom. And no wonder this poor person failed miserably, and we felt like such morons. And so, so for sure, Michael, your original question was how do you get culture in the company? And so my answer to you was, it starts from hiring.
And after you hire, how do you make sure that everybody kind of stays on point with the culture? Because I mean, listen, it's both of us. I feel like we have some sort of culture, but really, Aaron is the one like keeping a lot of it together. And I'm very casual, and I'm trying to work on that with management and bringing people on, because I'm realizing from, things that have gone wrong in the past that I need to be more clear on a lot of things that are happening, because I can't assume everybody knows everything. Right. Like, oh yeah, of course. Like, go use Slack, go use Notion, type me this and use this like this. No one knows how to use it. We built all this. This is our system. So I need to show them that. And, you learn that. I mean, listen, when I was in high school, I worked at Panera Bread, And, they ran me through a week of like, here's how you operate the computer. Here's how you make our sandwiches. And this is the way you do it. Now realizing, obviously you need that in every business, no matter big or small, because people need to understand how you do it, because that's why maybe you're successful and keep growing. And
we're going through that exact same process as that documentation, the documentation process of documenting processes. Like we've learned again through mistakes, is it's insanely important. So that's a big project for us and kind of our core team, is documenting everything we're doing.
Have you guys used Loom at all, the video recording?
So, yeah, it was similar. We use something called Story Express. Same thing.
Okay. Yeah. I finally forced myself to like do screen share videos of my face and my voice.
We're doing that. That's exactly what we're doing. And
it
works.
It definitely helps.
Well, you guys have given us so many tips. Usually I ask for, a little bit of, advice for our guests, but I feel like we covered so much. But I really would like to know, you guys can either take this separately or maybe together as a joint venture, but we'd love to hear your Call Me Crazy story. That's kind of the whole thing of this podcast. We all decided to go into business, whether it was kind of for our own need or on purpose. But do you guys have any incident where it was kind of like a crazy decision that you guys made and you moved forward anyway, and it brought you to where you are now? And it could be personal in your life also.
I mean, for me, I think my Call Me Crazy moment was when, like we said earlier, like the whole reason of starting the company. I mean, here we are, first-time parents. We have a daughter who was born 24 weeks. She weighed under a pound. She spent 6 months in the NICU. We brought her home. She had tubes and wires and everything. And, thankfully today she's a healthy, vivacious 5-year-old and doing great. But those early days were very scary and very challenging. And then so we go from that to then starting a business. I mean, I remember my parents were like, they knew like they wanted to be very delicate and they were trying to be very like supportive, but I think they thought we were crazy. I think they thought we were out of our minds to be like, you just went through the most challenging period of your life.
And now you're going to start a business.
And now you're going to start a business? Like, what is going through your head? To me, that is absolutely my ultimate Call Me Crazy moment. And then also, I would probably add to that is the way in which we hired our first employee. It was like, what were we thinking? My God.
Well, that one didn't go out, so that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes those moments to kind of get where you are.
For sure. I mean, it's where you guys are today. It's great. Everybody should go listen to your podcast, Mixing Business with Pleasure. We'll also be on there. I think we're going to go on there in January, right? Or
ASAP. Well, I think, you guys were booked up until a certain date.
Sometime in January.
January.
Website, proofpoint.marketing. We'll put all the links in the description here. You guys are hiring, so maybe we'll put that there too. Maybe everybody can reach out and go check it out when you guys are actually hiring.
I heard they have a great onboarding process. You'll be treated well.
Yeah, if you got any listeners who are content marketers or paid media folks, that's what we're going to be looking for.
That's what we're looking for, yeah.
Well, Gaby, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you both.
Thanks,
guys. We had a
guys.
wonderful time. Thank you.
Thanks.